Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to my October Harmonica Festival seminar. Unfortunately, coming to you over the internet and not in person, but fingers crossed, we're all back to normal next year, and I hope you're all bearing up to this COVID situation well. And I personally have found it a great time, A, to watch a lot of Netflix, but more importantly, to practice and think over music, learn some new things, and study all the great material available pretty much free of charge online on YouTube, Apple Music and Spotify, because basically you've got the whole of music history at your fingertips. And I'm really looking forward to the next hour and 15 minutes. I was thinking of doing about 15 minutes of talking, 45 minutes or so of teaching, and then at the end of the session we can open it up for any questions or any playing or anything that you've heard that you want to go over. And the seminar, if that's too grand a word, the lecture, whatever it is, the workshop, is about stealing riffs and motifs and licks and ideas from other instruments and genres and using them with the blues harmonica. I really think that the diatonic blues harmonica is one of the greatest musical miracles of 20th century popular music, because the fact that it's incredibly superficially unpromising instrument, both in terms of what it was designed to do originally and also the apparent crudeness of its initial design, was transformed into an incredibly amazing instrument, and I think that's really quite something. And I think the diatonic's ability to pack such a large emotional punch and play as much music as it's capable of is truly a marvel to behold. And I think we can all agree in blues circles that the man who did more than any other, the artist that did more than any other to take it to unheard of heights, was little Walter Jacobs, just after the Second World War in the early 1950s in Chicago. And in fact, Miles Davis described him as one of the greatest creative geniuses of his time. And I think really, in terms of blues, as we all know, because he's still held in such high esteem, he's probably the most significant blues harp player of all time. And the way that he developed the instrument, the instrument's range and identity by looking at other instruments and what they played, specifically jazz saxophones, to broaden the scope of the instrument and create fashionable and exciting music for his era. And little Walter had tremendous commercial success. He was more popular than the now more popular Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf and Sonny Boy Williamson. I think he was right up there with Jimmy Reed as having the most R&B hits of his time. And I think that the reason above all others as to why he was so commercial and what made him stand out from all these blues musicians, even until this day, was that he was a composer of catchy and identifiable riffs and hooks within the framework of the 12-bar blues. So each hit tune of his had its own hummable melodic identity. So if I just grab a harp, I can sort of go through them all now. Each song has got a memorable riff. So you've got Duke, you've got Can't Hold Out Much Longer, then you've got Off the Wall, then you've got stuff like, you've got a song like You're So Fine, or you've got Rocker, or Blues with a Feeling, and so on. You've got My Babe. I mean, the list is endless, and they're all, you can remember the riffs, you can hum the riffs, and they're all melodic, and give each song their melodic identity. And if you look at if you analyse all the other blues harp players of the era, like Sonny Boy, Junior Wells, Walter Horton, James Cotton and so on, try and hum right now a melody from one of their songs. It's pretty difficult because a lot of them were more sort of rhythmical players great players, incredible players, but they didn't have that melodic, hooky sensitivity that Little Walter had. And that was largely because he was listening to these big band artists and copying the horn riffs, the head arrangements at the beginning of the songs. Now, when Little Walter left us, he didn't leave an instruction manual on how to play the instrument, and in the few interviews that we have, he wasn't very expansive and perhaps unable to verbalise his own incredible artistic approach towards the instrument. And if we flash forward to 2020 and look back at the history of the harmonica and popular music from 1952 to the present day, we see that apart from Little Walter, in the blues, the diatonic blues harp has had relatively little impact in worldwide mass sort of popular music and culture, other than perhaps adding a bit of flavour as a small detail in a pop song here and there. There's been no Hendrix, Clapton or Peter Green of the diatonic blues harmonica. And truth be told, early on in the 60s and 70s, due to the lack of technical knowledge about how to play the instrument, there's been a lot of incredibly bad diatonic playing in the highly visible world of commercial popular music. There's been a real struggle to see how to fit the instrument into popular song other than the blues. In fact, further truth be told, some of the very basic and messy playing ruins a lot of the songs it's been featured in and has impacted upon the reputation of the blues harp. I hope not being controversial, but I'm just sort of speaking my mind on some of this. Meanwhile, in the niche world of blues, which has always been very separate to popular music, there's been some truly amazing playing from harmonica players we all know and love, and many of them are still with us. But I don't think that Little Walter's degree of original riff writing has been there. I think it's been largely absent, in my opinion. Again, if you try and immediately bring to mind 5 hummable riffs since his time from one individual blues harmonica star in a way that you can with Little Walter, it's pretty tough to do that. I mean, it's pretty tough to. I think probably the you know, I can only think of Magic Dick maybe, but I don't know how hummable Whammer Jammer is. And then, of course, there's the technical issues, because as we all know, the diatonic blues harmonica is not fully chromatic. You're missing notes. You need 12 instruments to play in all different keys. And yes, I know there's overblowing. We'll come back to that a bit later. With musicians who played other instruments other than the harmonica, the blues harp became to be seen as a technically limited instrument, and they never let us harmonica players forget it. Melodically complex jazz and pop tunes with key changes and complex head arrangements would be seen as a struggle or even off limits. And I think what has happened is it's resulted in a bit of a huge inferiority complex amongst blues harmonica players, for both the facts that the instrument has somewhat been marginalised and its creative horizons have been quite narrow. And this marginalised status and the resultant lack of confidence has led to a polarised creative mentality in the diatonic world that has seen, diatonic, I'm not talking about chromatic, I'm talking about the blues diatonic world, that has seen two extreme polarised creative mentality with two extremes of approach. So firstly, they're the extremely conservative traditionalists who stick rigidly to what's been played and written before as a sort of a safety net. It's been proven and tested and it's never been done better, and largely with blues harmonica that is the case. I mean, a lot of the original players are very hard to beat, both in terms of technique and emotion, and a lot of these traditional players sort of are copycats, and they sort of copy licks as a badge of honour to prove themselves to their own, to themselves and also to their blues peers and friends, and they can be quite reluctant to hear anything new and also quite critical of those doing anything new. And along with this comes the vintage gear obsession, amps and mics and so on, trying to get the perfect vintage sound, because there's not been very, unlike with instruments like guitar or piano, there's not been really any new and original standout artists after Little Walter and the golden age of Chicago blues. So for the harp, they're really doubling down on the Little Walter era for a sense of security. And secondly, there are the extreme technicians who want to break the blues harp out of the limited technical status it's been landed with and obsessed with technique in general, especially the transformation of the diatonic blues harp into a fully chromatic instrument through overblowing, and take it to levels of extreme soloing and amp effects. And they really go to the very extreme edge of complicated music to prove their point, and sometimes it sounds like they're not out to create art but to prove technique, and sometimes it just isn't enjoyable and listenable to. And my approach to blues, on the other hand, is sort of through the middle path, so the middle of these two extremes, but not middle of the road. So I use a massive dose of tradition, which I love, with a seasoning of originality in my soloing and riff writing to make my take on blues sound fresh and individual, but not uncomfortably extreme and far away from the traditional power of the music. So just as little Walter developed the instrument's range and identify by looking at other instruments and what they play to broaden the scope of the instrument, I've tried to do the same to create my own playing style and writing style. So in this workshop tonight, we take in 16 examples of tracks, playing in tracks, that prove that there's nothing to be frightened of and everything to gain by listening to other instruments. You don't need any overblowing skills for these riffs. All the notes are available on the diatonic with standard blues technique, whether the charming solo blues track by the great Duke Ellington that we're going to listen to, or the riff from Smoke on the Water by the mighty Deep Purple. You'll notice that all of these tracks are very easily playable and sound great on the diatonic, all of the riffs and the runs that we're going to pull from them. And the thing that I want to put across before we dive into these examples is that some of these examples are incredibly famous in the history of popular music and are very easily achievable on the harp. And you'll notice that the most famous of all these riffs that we're going to look for are the most simple musically and thus the most catchy. And the fact they're so achievable on the harp makes you realise there's a whole range of creative possibilities in terms of introducing the blues harp into pop and rock songwriting. So hopefully this might act as a little bit of inspiration to go off and write your own catchy riffs and hooks. And also at the end, I've gone back to blues as well, because one of the great joys of the music, for me at any rate, is listening to other blues artists and sort of stealing solo ideas for them. So we've got some great little ideas from Buddy Guy, B.B. King and Memphis Slim on guitar, Buddy Guy and B.B. King of course on guitar, and Memphis Slim on piano. And I think they're going to be some really interesting little tricks that you can put into your own blues soloing to add that little sort of seasoning of originality. And so there we go, 16 examples. And one more thing, I know there's a lot to take in, and you might be wondering why I've done so many examples for just one workshop. And I believe firstly that knowledge is power, and I believe secondly that context is power. So when you do a wide range of riffs, you can compare and contrast all the different riffs from the different genres and the different instruments, not only to see the differences and hear the differences, but also see and hear the similarities as well. So I'm going to stop talking now. You'll be pleased to hear, and we'll dive into some of these riffs. So here we go. So we're sort of I've got a song list here that goes from jazz. It's sort of chronological. It ends with blues, but the first three genres are sort of chronological. We've got we start off with jazz, and then we head into soul jazz. So it's classic jazz to begin with, sort of 50s jazz. Then we dive into 60s sort of groovy soul jazz, and then we go into rock and soul. Okay, and it's quite interesting to see how the complexity sort of, as people realise that the more complex music didn't sell, it's quite interesting to see how the riffs become simpler and easier to comprehend as we go through the tracks. So first of all, we're going to start with a great riff from a fantastic Count Basie track called Splanky, and we're going to need that's the first time I've said that in real life. I've only just read it. So Splanky is a wonderful word there to repeat. So Count Basie Splanky. You're going to need an F sharp harp for this one, and luckily I had one in the depths of my harmonica case. It surprised even me that I had an F sharp harp surrounding me in my harp. Here we go. So let's check this out. I'm going to play it first. We're concentrating on the head riff, and by the way, before I go on, I'm going to be I'm willing to provide an MP3. I've recorded all of these as well on GarageBand, all of these riffs with my harps, and I'm willing to, if you send an email address to the guys here or an email address to me, I'm happy to send you an MP3 of all these harp samples as well, in case you can't hear them or you want to go over them yourself. So here we go. So this is Splanky. Great Count Basie intro of the descending piano. So here we go. So this is a really great strutty sort of riff that's quite simple to play and could easily be taken and utilized in a 12 bar. You could easily modify this into a 12 bar blues. So let's check it out. I played this today and recorded it. So let's check it out on harp. Here we go. And we'll just play it one more time. So it's a really great strutty little riff, and you can see that it's not very complicated, but at the same time it sort of breaks you out of that traditional sort of blues pattern. And with that, so here we go. Let's just. So that's six blow, whole six blow. That's a lovely little unusual combined with the whole four draw bend. That's a lovely little transition, little jump that adds a little bit of spice in there that could be that you could think about and then add to your own playing or your own composition. Again, we're not needing any other notes than are already there on the diatonic. So this is a great one to start off with. Very simple, but very cool and very strutty. So let me just slow it down again. So that one's really worth getting under your belt, and it's available on a Count Basie album called Live at the Sands in Las Vegas, and I think they recorded it before Frank Sinatra came on, when they were supporting Frank Sinatra. It's also available on the Atomic Basie, which is one of Count Basie's most famous albums. So check it out. And then we're going to move on to this little track, Duke Ellington. We're going to move on to the great Duke Ellington, who I absolutely love. And he was an awesome blues pianist, or put a lot of blues into his piano playing, and did a lot of albums in the 50s and 60s that were just solo albums or with a small quartet, so it wasn't just his big band. And the great thing about Duke's playing is that he was he's a very beautiful player. The music is anything but aggressive blues. It's very sweet and filled with space and with great phrasing, because of course he was a great composer as well with Billy Strayhorn. But he was a great composer and really held back on these small band recordings. And I found this on a Starbucks jazz compilation, Starbucks jazz playlist on Apple Music, and just fell in love with the writing and fell in love with the playing on it. So I gave it a bash, and again, it's a wonderful, really wonderful tune for blues harp. So let's check it out here. I'm going to play the original, and then I'll play you my interpretation on the harp. So here we go. Let's check this out. This is called B Sharp Blues, from a Duke Ellington album called Piano Reflection. So let's check it out first. So there we go. So you'll notice that he's a great musician to get into, just in terms of his piano playing. Listen to how suave it is, listen to how just delicate and beautiful it is. You know, it's not aggressive. It's not trying too hard. He's laying back. He's playing clear riffs. And yeah, you need an F harp for this one. It says it's in B flat, but maybe because of the recording process back in the day, it's changed it into C. But you will need an F harp in second position for this one. So let me play me playing it on GarageBand, so you can hear it sounds on the harp. Again, I think it sounds really cool on the harp, and the turnaround at the end sounds really interesting. And again, you don't need any overblows for it. It's just a really nice piece. So let's check it out. So again, you see you've got some really interesting things going on there that you don't usually hear in the in blues harmonica soloing or riff writing. Let's just hear a couple of them. So that sort of lovely little sort of faux ugly sort of note there that gives it just a little bit of quirky sort of quirky attitude there, because he's playing very sweetly, and then he just throws in that, which is a whole one draw a bend down. So let me just play that again. Let me just play the beginning of it. Here we go. It's almost a little Walter-esque, you know. It's almost a little Walter-esque. There are a couple of times in Walter's solos where he goes down to those notes. But it's great because again we're not playing usual stuff, but we're playing interesting stuff that's within the range of the harp. And then he goes on to these the great second part of this. Let's check this out. Great. So again, this is not beyond the realms of any of you, I don't think, or any harmonica players out there. But the great thing is that it's interesting, and then we can definitely be used in a 12-bar, either a blues song or an instrumental blues song. So let's check it, and let's check out this next bit here. Great bit again, you see, unusual. Now what's interesting about that turnaround that goes I think it's holes 7 and 8. What's interesting about that turnaround is that if you listen to Little Walter and his upper register use on songs like Chicago Bound and Mellow Down Easy, Walter uses those notes specifically, and I think that that's a clear indication that Walter, you know, of how Walter was listening to jazz musicians and putting this sort of stuff into his playing. So again, this is Duke Ellington B flat blues from Piano Reflections, and you can find it on Apple Music on the Starbucks Jazz Essentials playlist, which is actually incredibly good. Okay, so let's carry on. And I was looking through this playlist and found 2 more tracks that I really wanted you guys to check out, and I wanted to play myself because again they sounded really interesting. So we've got Cannonball Adderley, the great Cannonball Adderley. Now Cannonball is a great jazz sax player as a blues player to study, because he played obviously with Miles Davis in the great quartet and played on Kind of Blue. But in comparison to John Coltrane, he was the alto sax player. John Coltrane was the tenor sax player. Cannonball Adderley was the more bluesy of the two of them, and he'd actually played in Roadhouse blues bands and so on, but created this incredibly soulful jazz style that mixed in elements of gospel and elements of blues, as well as jazz. And this isn't going to be work song. This is going to be Barefoot Sunday Blues, which is something that I hadn't heard of, but I heard the head on it, and it was something that I wanted to check out for the harp. So let's hear it first, and then I will play a bit of it on the harmonicas. Here we go. Let's check it out. So there we go. So that's the head of it, and it's a wonderful sort of slinky 60s. You can imagine it in a jazz lounge in Chicago or somewhere. And let's play it. So we need a B flat harp for this one, and after the highness of the F sharp and the F harp, it's quite a relief to get back down onto a B flat. So let's check this out here. Here we go. So there we go. Let's hear it one more time. So it's a really great, simple jazz head again, but it's really expressive, and again, it breaks you out of that. It breaks you out of the pattern of the usual sort of blues heads. But let's listen to that turnaround. The turnaround is a really wonderful little thing here. This little detail, and I think I might have heard Sonny Boy do something similar in a track called "Stop Right Now." Let's just hear this little turnaround here. So very accessible. This is a very accessible track to harp players. It's basically blues harp players. This is basically what we've been doing all along, but it's slightly more interesting melodically. So let's just play it one more time. Really great track there. So that's Barefoot Sunday Blues by Cannonball Adderley. So we're 3 tracks in, and really, when you listen to these tracks, I'll provide a list of them after the workshop. But when you listen to them, really try and notice how they're working on the harp, because they're all working in the same range of notes. We're not doing anything that's out of the ordinary. We're not trying to stretch the technical capabilities of the instrument. We're playing everything within what is there, what is available to anyone with the blues harp technique. So bending the notes, and the blues harp technique basically between holes 1 to 6. With the Ellington one, it goes slightly above holes 7 and 8 to get the turnaround. But we're in the same ballpark here as the blues harmonica players. So don't feel threatened. What's really fascinating when you play these is you'll think, oh my God, that sounds great, it sounds interesting, and it's with all the notes that I can play. But if you've been playing a lot of blues, it'll just take a while to just to break the programming.
Giles,
Yep.
can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry to interrupt. When you're playing with the Fs and the F sharps, the first one I grabbed out, I didn't realise was a low F and a low F sharp, and that sounded pretty cool as well. I mean, the high Fs are they're already punchy, obviously, but the low Fs sound so mellow.
That's a really good idea, and I don't actually have any low Fs in my arsenal, but that's a really good idea, and that's a great idea for you guys out there if you're playing, because a lot of these a lot of the piano tunes. I mean, we're going to go on to Memphis Slim. Memphis Slim, as sophisticated as he was and amazing pianist as he was, only ever played in two keys. He played in, and he didn't use the piano pedals either. He played in C and G. So a lot of his stuff, the majority of the stuff is in C, like with most boogie woogie pianists, and also a lot of jazz pianists play in C. So Ben's got a great point there. If you want to take these down into a more mellow tone of harp, get the which I'm actually going to do. I think it's a really good idea. Is to get a low F and a low F sharp to make them a bit mellower and easier on the eardrums. So let's move. We're going to move to the last. I've done four tunes in each of these sections. This is the classic jazz. We're going to move into soul jazz and funk in a second, but let's listen to Blues After Dark by the great bebop trumpeter Dizzy Gillespie, who's playing in this track obviously a lot simpler than he does in his bebop guise. So this again is a wonderful jazz blues track. So let's check it out. So we don't do the intro, we're going to come here. Now there we go. That's a beautiful track. Let me play you what that sounds like on harmonica, and then we'll look into it. It really is it's a cool track. Let's check this out. So really beautiful track, lots of held notes, and a really interesting phrase. And again, slightly different to what we're used to playing on the blues harp. You know, it breaks you out of those traditional blues cliches that are wonderful and wonderfully played by the giants. But you know, we can obviously add more to it. So let me just try and play a little bit of this again. And so on. There we go. So again, a really mellow and beautiful blues track there. And what I want to say before we move on to the slightly simpler and more groovy 60s soul jazz and funk, we're going to go on to JB's track, "Pass the Peas," that they recorded. They were obviously James Brown's backing band, and this is a really funky track that we got coming up, which is going to be in first position on a D harp. But what I'd like to say before we move is you'll notice that these are sophisticated jazz players, and there's always been a real, on the diatonic, there's always been a real inferiority complex between us diatonic blues players and other instruments that play jazz, and also maybe the chromatic harmonica as well, that it's not as because it is lacking technically, it's lacking some of the notes. But what you'll notice is these are very sophisticated musicians, these are very sophisticated composers, and these are blues tracks within jazz. They're creating blues tracks in jazz, and you'll notice that the harmonica doesn't have any of the notes, the diatonic blues harmonica doesn't have any of the notes missing for blues tracks within jazz, because they were specifically artistically trying to create a blues track with the notes in the blues scale. And you'll notice that the harp is actually really incredibly well suited to play this style of jazz. And you know, these are like proper grown-up musicians here, you know, that were, you know, very sophisticated. So I think it's great to go through and explore, because we've basically got all of this music at our fingertips instantly. It's great to go. Oh yeah, this is a B flat harp. It's in F. This is a B flat harp. So basically, you can go through and explore all of these heads and learn them, record yourself playing them, and you'll be using all the notes you are as a blues harmonica player already, but it'll help you break out of the normal patterns. So let's move on. We're going to go to the 70s now. We're going to sort of fluctuate between the 60s and 70s, but we've got the JBs and Pass the Ps, and this of course is a very famous, if you're in London and you hang out with funk bands in London town, then this tune is going to be brought out more than once in your relationship with them. So here we go. So this is Pass the Ps by the JBs with Maceo Parker. I don't think of Maceo Parker. Maceo was in this lineup. I think this was Fred Wesley on trombone. So let's check this out.
Hey, Bobby, why do you like soul food? Because it makes me happy. Pass the peas like you used to say. Pass the peas like you used to say. Pass the peas like you used to say. Pass the peas like you used to say.
So there we go. That's a very famous riff, and it's the go-to riff for all of those funk jammers out here. So it's in first position. You need a D harp. It's in D. You need a D harp in first position, and let's just play that. Here we go. Is it here? Let me just check. Here we go. We're going to move on to this one here. So there we go, Pass the Ps in first position on a D harp. Again, this is a great one to study because it gives you something original to do with first position. So and one other very interesting thing about this track that is good to check out if you're a harp player is that they actually transition the song. They change key up to A. So you can actually change key with the song, and you're changing key from first position to second position. So let me just play along with it. Let me show you what I mean. And up to A. So that's very useful as well because it gives you a template if you're writing an instrumental. Why switch harps when you can ingeniously write the instrumental to switch keys that are suitable for the harp that you're using? So you don't need to switch harps. Write the instrumental in the right key. So let's move on. We're going to move on to, let me check my list. We're going to move on to Listen Here by Eddie Harris. Now again, this is a 60s, 70s, very simple riff. This is a 60s, 70s groove classic by the great Eddie Harris. You're going to need an E-flat harp, for this one. So let's check this one out. This is a great track. Incredibly simple riff, but you just don't need any more. It's incredibly memorable, and really cool. So let's check this out. So really cool track, and you'll notice how simple it is and how much space there is, because of course we're getting into, it's the same with Pass the Peas, we're getting into the 60s and 70s, and the horns need to be simpler in order to allow the groove to really work, so they're not getting too complicated and sort of cutting into the groove. And also it's just great, it's hooky, and it's Moorish. It makes you want to come back for more. So let's hear it on the harp. It's pretty simple to play, but again, you know, this is something that you can look at and analyze and try and compose your own sort of thing around what he's doing here. So let's just go here. There we go. Here we go, just trying to find my E-flat. So one more time. It's incredibly simple. It's simpler than a lot of Little Walter stuff, but of course it's written, it's thought about, he's thought about the groove, he's thought about the melody, and he's produced this wonderfully succinct, hooky, Moorish, wonderful riff there. So that's Eddie Harris. Listen here, and you can get that. I'll give you the list at the end, so you can check it out. So moving swiftly on, we're going to what have we got? I think we're gonna miss out. We got Nice and Greasy, which is let's check this out. We're gonna do a couple more here and then go on to the modern stuff. So this is Nice and Greasy by. We're going to go through these two quite quickly so we can fit everything in. So this is Nice and Greasy by the great Lou Donaldson. He did some very greasy recordings indeed in the 60s and 70s. Let's check it out on Blue Note. So again, we'll move through this one quite quickly, but again, it's a really, really cool track. And let me just. So on. So again, a really nice little simple head arrangement that's groovy, it's catchy, and it's incredibly likable as well. So something to listen to and to analyse. And then we're going to move on to one more from this soul jazz corner of my workshop. We're going to move on to a really great Hammond organ track by Shirley Scott, who was married she was one of the best Hammond organ players, and she was also a lady. So she was a really fantastic artist, up there with the best of them. and she was married to Stanley Turrentine, the sax player that plays on all the Jimmy Smith records on Blue Note, and we're going to copy the horn riff off of this. So here we go. That's a monstrous, absolutely monstrous track, and it really swings. So you can really hear that working on a dance floor in the '60s. This is in the key of G, so you need a C harp to play it. And let me just play the riff. I've recorded all of these riffs beforehand because it's quite a lot to remember on the night. And obviously, when I record them, I can take my time, get them right, so you can hear them. And I repeat this fact, I can send you all of these riffs as a single MP3, so you can work your way through the list and play along to my harp playing in the privacy of your own home. Here we go. So let's play this. Really love that riff. Really great, simple bluesy thing, and also it's quite interesting if you listen to Sugar Blue. Sugar Blue actually bases the whole of his style in that area of the harp. So we're talking whole six upwards. He bases his whole style up in that area of the harp. And having met Blue and talked to him and read interviews with him as well, he was based in New York originally, and I think he listened to a lot of sax players, and a lot of sax players, of course, base their stuff in that range, in that sort of melodic range, in that sort of area of notes. So we're going to move into, for all the non-jazz fans out there, and my girlfriend is a big non-jazz fan, causes all sorts of problems at home. We're going to move into the much safer terrain of rock music and soul music now, ladies.
Giles, can I ask you a quick question? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm thinking that since this is all melodic, this would all work on a chromatic as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. My thing has always been diatonic, so right. I'm always looking for ways to increase my vocabulary on the diatonic harmonica and create new bluesy ideas and new riffs that are not a million miles away from what's come before, but are just you know, I think what I'm trying to get across tonight is that there's a huge amount of music out there that has been untapped because people have been a bit scared about sort of they either feel a bit like they need to go back in time and keep locked into a certain style for security, or they need to go so far into complicated sort of sophisticated melodies and music that it's sort of, you know, to prove the diatonic's worth, that it sort of becomes not much fun and quite unlistenable. And what I'm trying to prove is that the diatonic harmonica is capable of playing all of these different incredible heads, and also, as we're about to see, a lot of the riffs from some very big rock and pop hits. So I agree. You could put all of this on the Chromatic as well. It's basically it's open season on all these hooks because they're all there. The great thing is not for us musicians because we're earning a pittance, but the great thing is for all of your students and lovers of music is that there's so much music just available. You just need to type in a name and a track, and there you go. I mean, I'm getting on a bit, and I remember even 20 years ago, you still had to order your 20, 30 years, you had to order your records or see what you could get in a record shop. Now you can pick up the entire back catalogue of Duke Ellington or Dizzy Gillespie or Little Walter at the click of a finger for no money whatsoever. So it's a very valuable time. So
Giles, just a quick point. Tonight you're not earning a pittance because all these beautiful 95 people, they're all donating money to you personally.
Oh well.
They're all giving you £5 or £10 or 20 or 100, possibly 100. So you're not earning a pittance tonight. So thank you.
That's very kind, guys. Thank you very much. I wasn't expecting that. I've really enjoyed getting these tracks together, and all you need muted. All you need to do, just email me. I'll get the guys to give you my email address, or you can email me via my website, and I'll send you an MP3 of all these harmonica tracks. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go to popular music, not all this niche stuff. We're going to go to the Black Keys, and now I had a really great experience in about 2009. Because I put on a Steve Cropper concert with the Animals. So Steve Cropper is the guitarist who co-wrote Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, Midnight Hour, and he was in Booker T and the MGs, helped write Green Onions with that amazing guitar playing in. And the great thing was that I got to spend about 3 hours talking to him in the hotel bar after the show. And he was talking about songwriting, he was talking about what they did at Stax Records. And he basically told me this very incredible piece of advice. He said, solos don't sell songs. What Steve Cropper concentrated on were the money licks. He called them the money licks. Very simple, melodic licks in the songs that were hummable and memorable and made the songs stand out. So that's what what made his records and the records at Stax so successful. And that's what makes a lot of great rock music and soul music successful. And we've got four tunes here from the rock and soul world. We've got Lonely Boy by the Black Keys. We've got Midnight Hour by Wilson Pickett, co-written by Steve Cropper, and Steve's on guitar. We've got Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, and we've got Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water. So let's just go through all of these, and we're gonna play the money licks. We're gonna play the money licks from all of these tracks, and see again. It's all easily done on harmonicas, so there's no reason why a new pop genius can't come along with a diatonic harmonica and just simply write some of these melodic hooks into a song, and hey presto, you become a millionaire maybe. So let's look at this. Let's check this out. So this is we're going to do the intro riff to Lonely Boy with the Black Keys. So. Now this track was a huge radio hit, and that riff has got something to do with it. So let's play what that sounds like on harmonica. And there we go. Here we go. So. There we go, let's play it one more time. Again, it's a very simple hook. It's a money lick, just like Steve Cropper would have written, but it's written in a very contemporary rock track that became a radio hit. And we're going to look at Midnight Hour now by Steve Cropper, and the horn break in the middle of the track. Again, we need an A harp in second position, but it's very similar. It's very similar. They might have even been influenced by it. I don't know, but it's very similar. And of course, it's basically one of the most famous horn lines. It's the thing that everyone hums from the song. So here we go. Let's get the right track on. Here we go. Let's check it out. So there we go. So a very simple, but that's the one piece of that track. Ever since I heard it as a child, that's the one piece of the track that I always remember. So let's hear it on harmonica. We're going to do two more tracks. I think we're going to leave the because I want to answer some questions in a second. So we're gonna do two more tracks. I'll leave the blues tracks because it sort of goes off on a bit of a tangent. But what I will do, the blues tracks will be there at the end of the MP3. So it's a little. We take a little bit of playing from The Thrill Is Gone from B.B. King, What Kind of Woman Is This from Buddy Guy, and two rare Memphis Slim tracks. So we play a bit of Boogie Woogie and a really interesting intro that he does for a track. So, but they'll be on the MP3 if you want to have the MP3. What I'm going to do now, though, is we're going to play Midnight Hour. We're just going to listen to it on the harp, and then we're going to move on to Smoke on the Water. So here we go. Let's play Midnight Hour. Here we go. Very simple. Let's hear it one more time without me mucking it up. So there we go. You've got the one of the most famous horn lines in the history of popular music, easily playable on an A diatonic harmonica, an incredibly wonderful hooky piece of music writing. We're just going to go on to Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes. We'll rush through these because I want to open up to questions and not keep you guys on too long. So let me just it's just basically the bass line here again. One of the most famous, in the last 20 years, one of the most famous rock songs of the last 20 years. So let's just play this quickly. So I take the guitar line at the beginning of the second verse where he oh, hang on, that's there we go. So here we go. Let's check it out. So there we go. So we got the Seven Nation Army. Again, another example of a very simple but very catchy riff. And then to finish things off, we're going to look at Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, just on a normal C harp. And here we go. The intro riff to this, probably the most famous rock riff of them all. So let's just they're gonna rip it up. Here we go. So there we go. So that is obviously one of the most amazing, catchy, and memorable rock riffs of all time. And again, you can play it on the harmonica, so you won't be left out if you want to join a hard rock band. So there we go. So I think we're gonna leave all the clips there. What we've basically done is we've gone from classic jazz, we've gone to 70s sort of funk and 60s soul jazz, and then we've gone to the classic rock and the contemporary classic rock, because the stuff I play, and soul with Midnight Hour. And to conclude, I guess what I'd like to say is that all of this stuff is achievable on the diatonic harmonica with standard blues harmonica technique. And really, what I'm trying to illustrate tonight, what I've tried to illustrate, is that you need to think, don't feel inferior to other instruments and think that you've got to prove yourself by writing stuff with a huge amount of technique and a huge amount of complication and sophistication. You should really think about simple. All of these guys didn't overcomplicate. Even the Duke Ellington stuff and the Dizzy Gillespie stuff is very beautifully simple, clear, concise, melodic, and memorable, and it's all achievable on the harmonica. And if you wanted to try cross pollination of all these styles, you could try and compose or adapt "Smoke on the Water," maybe the hard rock version, into a classic jazz lounge piece, a swinging version of "Smoke on the Water" on the harmonica. That might be be an interesting sort of departure for the harp. But in all seriousness, I think there's a wonderful range of different ideas there, and hopefully it should spark you into your own sort of creative writing, and maybe it's a way, if you're a harmonica player in a rock band or an originals band, it might be a way of working your harp even more effectively into that band's songwriting. So let's we can open the floor to questions, and I'm quite willing to answer any questions that you might have.
There's one here from Joe saying, what mics and amps do you use on stage?
I'd use traditional 50s crystal static harmonica mics, and an Electro Voice. I've got an Electro Voice mic as well, and it goes through a 4x10 Bassman, no effects or anything. But I'm doing a sort of a French style album maybe in the new year, and I'm thinking of playing through an SM58 and trying to get a more acoustic amped tone, through the PA. So watch this space.
Another question: would you play "Smoke on the Water" with double stops?
With the double stops, so just the riffs. Let me so. There we go. That's the "Smoke on the Water" riff. Any other questions?
I've got one for you then, Giles. So how do you actually go about getting the timing and tone right? Do you just do it by ear?
I've done it. Yeah, everything I've done is by ear, and I think it's really the best way in the popular music world when you're working with bands, because you might learn how to read music, but it doesn't mean anyone else can read music. And also a lot of the vast majority of people in writing this stuff couldn't read music either. I mean, Steve Cropper can't read music, and sometimes that it might actually hold you back, because you might actually be trying to achieve something that's actually too complicated. When if you go by ear and instinct, you can get something that might even work better.
Giles, it's Pete here. I play chromatic, and I don't play diatonic, but when I'm grown up and old enough and clever enough, I might buy a diatonic.
That's what I meant to say to a chromatic player.
Yeah. But I've been playing along tonight, and I've really enjoyed it, actually. I've been playing some of the riffs on the chromatic, and it's given me some really great ideas, so thanks so much indeed for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks very much.
Do we have any other questions at all?
Any questions, let me know. I'll answer them gladly.
I think, Giles, for me, it's been inspirational. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And my background is playing trumpet, so I first was listening to Louis Armstrong and Dizzy Gillespie, and of course Miles and Chet Baker, and thinking about the melodic. Okay, putting the chords aside for a minute, thinking about the melodic structure of the harmonica, be it diatonic or is Simon Joy here? Tremolo or chromatic.
Simon's here somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of just. I mean, you're trying to get it to be just like whistling, aren't you? It's supposed to be tunes.
It's an earworm, It's something.
Yeah.
It's something. This is something that is. This is something that if you think about it, I can't really whistle a Sonny Boy Williamson riff, easily. It's but a little Walter or it's something that actually has, and surprising because a lot of the contemporary, like the West Coast harmonica players from the 80s and 90s were very jazz influenced, but there's not really that killer compositional thing going on, which I think if you look back at these these records and these classic riffs from jazz and from rock and from funk and from soul, you can really create stuff that sticks in the mind, that can be integrated into a 12 bar and really sticks in the mind. And it's certainly something that I did with my last album, Don't Give Up on the Blues, and it worked. I did some traditional blues on there, but I did songs with big riffs that still were 12 bar blues, but they were based around one big riff.
How would you think little Louis Jordan fits into this?
Well, Louis Jordan was a massive influence on both Sonny Boy Williamson and Little Walter. And he is he's an incredible zippy player. I mean, he's one of my favorite players, and I think if I'd had more time, I would have included maybe a song from him. I mean, Caledonia is the one with the really sort of. That's the sort of the sort of the catchy poppy jazzy riff that he sort of invented. And in fact, he was these smaller band recordings by Dizzy Gillespie that I played, and by Dizzy Gillespie and by Duke Ellington were he when Louis Jordan came along, he held it in as a sort of a smaller band movement in jazz, and with these punchy little arrangements, he probably influenced Duke and Dizzy and all of those guys quite a lot.